Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Glasgow with Game Objective. And usually on Monday nights, we have my partner in crime, Oscar Gonzalez, with my website here, and we do a podcast. But he can't make it tonight because he has somewhat of a life, I guess. In his place, I have the Honorable Regional Director of the Society of Professional Journalists, Michael Koretzky. Here he is. You can see him here. We apologize for getting the stream up a little bit late. We're having a little technical difficulties, as is usually the case with my with my setup. So right now I'm going to make sure that we are broadcasting. If we're not, then this has been awkward. We'll see. Make sure it's up and live and broadcasting, and then we'll get going. And it does not look like it. God damn it. Live streaming, stream now. There we go. And it does not look like it. God damn it. Live streaming, I believe we are up and live, but let me just make sure real quick. There we go. Oh, jeez. So how are you this evening, Koretzky?
I'm as good as could be expected on a Monday night.
Oh, good. And it does look like we are live. Okay. Yeah, it does. I'm responding. So how are you this evening, Koretzky? Let me share this to Twitter so people know where to go. There we go. Oh, that's a lot of work. A lot of work.
I'm sure you're highly compensated.
Yeah, actually, I had one video. I got 150,000 views on YouTube, and that should give me some pretty decent compensation. It's surprising how much money there is in it. But that's the wave of the future, I guess. So let's see. Are we getting people? Yeah, it looks like we have a few people, so it looks like it's going. So we will get started. Again, I apologize for my technical incompetence. With me here is Koretzky of the Society of Professional Journalists. We are going to talk today about the Kunkel Awards, which did the process begin in December last year?
Yeah, well, actually, I guess January, because you could nominate anything in December.
Okay.
That'll be the last calendar year.
Yeah. And your role with the Kunkels is you organize the whole thing, right?
And highly compensated, yeah.
And highly compensated. As journalists usually are.
I don't do the judging, but I get the judges. I don't get paid. I don't... So no, I just do the organizing.
Yes. So why do you do it?
I don't know. The way I figure it is anybody that's willing to talk about journalism, that's good by me. I mean, I look at journalism like I look at political science. You know, it's helpful in this society to learn how politics operate. Not that you have to do it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a journalist, but journalism is meant to be consumed by a democracy. So anyone that's willing to talk about it, even if it means insulting me or SPJ or anything else, that's worth it.
And you have gotten some insults, have you?
Well, I wouldn't know I'm alive unless I got some insults. If everyone starts agreeing with me, I get really kind of uncomfortable.
And now you did announce one of the three judges, did you not?
Yeah, he didn't mind being outed. Gideon Grudo, who's the head of the Freedom of Information Committee for SPJ, and he's a journalist in Washington, D.C. for the Air Force Association.
Now, can you tell me a little about the other two journalists? Obviously not their names, but their backgrounds.
One is a financial journalist who also serves on a committee in SPJ, and the other is a web editor. But all three of them play more video games than I do, which I guess anybody would have to. I still only play Age of Empires.
Age of Empires still? Yeah, I remember that from last year.
I don't know. I'm good at it. That's all I want to. I just don't want to deal with anything else. But they're all avid gamers. One of them met their wife through a forum for Zelda. So I think they know what they're talking about. They're the perfect judges because they're interested in gaming. They're interested in gaming journalism, but they're not in the industry, so they don't get paid for it. So any opinion they have, whether it's right or wrong in anyone's estimation, at least it's not conspiratorial.
Yes. Now, what kind of backing do you have from the Society of Professional Journalists?
Well, I would say...
are they just, you do your own thing, do whatever? And
I would say that the younger board members are cool with it. The older ones tolerate it. The good thing is the president of SPJ is 30, and that's Lynn Walsh, who was part of the SPJ Airplay event. So as long as she's the president, everything's cool.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have the insider there, Lynn Walsh. She's really good. I've talked with her in private a little, and yeah, she's great. So how do the Kunkels? Tell me about the logistics. You opened up the nominations, and so nominations just started flooding in, and you look at all of them?
Yeah, so basically what happens is we had 380 something, and I go through them first because I can objectively pare them down, usually by more than half, because, for instance, someone in the news reporting category will send in something that's from a website, and on the website itself it says opinion. So the website called it opinion, we're not going to call it news, so I can cut those out. Some of them, for instance, have only one source or all anonymous sources, and those still might be good stories. I had an argument with a well-known gaming site just this past week about, they submitted a story themselves, which is a good sign. At least they're starting to submit their own stuff. That was all anonymous sources, and wondered why it didn't win if we agreed it was a good article. And it's because for an award-winning story, awards are given out in journalism not only to feed the ego of a writer, but to send a message about what you want or what you think good journalism is. And while every so often you might need a story that's just anonymous sources, nobody else, we don't want to give an award to that because we want to encourage more of that. I mean, that should be a rare occurrence, but it shouldn't be what we reward. So by the end of it, I can usually get it down to 20, 30. One of the categories this past time had 42. And then the judges go through all of those themselves and comment back and forth. And I pluck those comments out to be quote. They know that I'm doing this. That I pluck those comments out when I write a blog post, because I don't know if anyone noticed, but when we write a blog post about the Kunkel winners, the actual blog post is about the losers, and then it links to the winners, because we want to inject as much commentary in there as possible, because we want people to see what we think is good journalism so they can argue with us.
And some of that commentary was a little controversial today, especially, but very colorful as always. I found it very entertaining. Of course, I disagree with some of the stuff, but it wouldn't be interesting if I agreed with everything. So
that's what I love about journalism, man. I think I said this before, but my brother is a computer programmer. There's only one way to do that right, because if it doesn't work, it's the blue screen of death. With journalism, you can do it a whole bunch of different ways, and it's still valid.
Yeah, and I should start out this whole thing by complimenting you on the Kunkels, that you know, this is your baby. You have put a whole lot of work into it, and I know you've probably gotten quite a bit of crap about it from a whole lot of different sides, and it takes some, I don't want to say balls, but it takes some guts to stand in there in the face of that. And of course, you're not being paid. There's not really much incentive for you other than promoting journalism. So,
look, it's not, honestly, I think I've said this before too, and it's not changed. I have, through all the stuff since I first got involved in this, I have not heard anything particularly hurtful. I mean, most of the criticism I got is about journalism. Like, you're an idiot for thinking that way. You're an idiot for doing that thing. But I don't think I've ever been insulted like, you're an idiot because of your personal hygiene, your family lineage, your dress. Like, I would make a distinction that I've yet to hear any criticism from gamers that has been personal. No one's insulted my penis size. No one has said it. So
then you might not be doing it right then.
Well, or what I think happens is too many people on all sides of every issue get way bent out of shape way too quick. I don't like personal attacks on anybody to anybody else, but I just haven't had any directed at me or SPJ or the judges.
Yeah. And of course, you're a longtime journalist, and you know, journalists. I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but you know, the young journalists seem to be rather sensitive to me today, and to me, I mean, I remember back in high school journalism, I was getting letters to the editor for my school paper, you know, attacking me pretty good. So I mean, if you've been in journalism for a while, you definitely need a thick skin.
I think the secret is that you need to deal with journalists that are over 50. Because once you get to be 50, like, I never figured this out when I was younger. Like, when I was a teenager, my dad would walk outside in his ratty bathrobe to pick up the paper, and I'd be so embarrassed. I didn't realize that he was 50 and he just didn't give a shit anymore. Like, he's already married. He's not going to, like, go on a lot of hot dates anymore. Like, who cares? So, in that sense, maybe because I'm over 50, like, this isn't a career move. I'm pretty much close to death. This doesn't, I mean, I like the back and forth, and I don't take it personally, but I got to be, I'm not a better person than anyone else. If I was 20, this would kill me. Yeah.
Now, you said you had 320 submissions, was it?
It's closer to 380. You know,
380.
I forget.
How many submissions did you have last year?
We were off like by about 10 or 20, I think. It wasn't. Oh. I expected a bigger drop off because usually the second time you do something, it's like the second moon launch. Like, who cares? Mm-hmm. But I was encouraged, not just by the numbers, but you can submit anonymously, but some people actually put who they were when they submitted. And I was surprised at how many gaming journalists or their publications submitted stuff, because last year they were much more skeptical.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Did it happen at all last year, or was it just very minimal?
No, I mean, I understand it last year because I talked to some gaming journalists and they thought, like, they were skeptical. Luckily, we gave out a lot of the awards, and I think we explained those awards well. Whether you agree with them or not, I think the explanation was reasonable. So I think those journalists figured, oh, maybe they're not that full of crap.
Yeah. And did all of the major gaming websites nominate their own articles?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's
many of them.
Writers from all those sites did.
Okay.
A couple of editors did, but I can't say that the sites did. But it was a good sign that some writers were nominating their own stuff that didn't do that the year before. I mean, maybe that shows that there's some sort of grudging trust, and I have no problem with that requiring a number of years. I mean, I'm not pissed at those people. If they don't trust us, then hopefully over time, as we pick new winners and explain why we did it, even if they disagree with the result, they'll at least see the reasoning.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else was different this year than last year? Obviously, you have different categories, and you had the very fun worst story. That was very highly entertaining, I thought.
I was wondering how that was going to go, and that's the one we screwed up because it turns out we picked a winner that was from the year before.
Yeah.
So someone pointed out, like, well, are you going to fix that? And I'm like, you know what? It's the one category where no one really cares. So, but what I am going to do is, since the judges couldn't pick just one worst story, the three that were mentioned were all bad. The prize for that category was a free 1-year membership in SPJ. I'm going to extend that offer to all three of those people. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to try to contact them. And if they want, they get a free $75 membership to SPJ for a year. I didn't really make certificates for them because I can't really see them putting that up on their wall. But if they want a membership, they're all going to get it. So that's how I'm going to atone for my sin.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that was sent to me. Do the winners get anything? Yeah,
in fact, I think I owe you a certificate from last year too. But I have certificates that I printed up, and I'm going to try to mail them all because the good thing is that because this year went better, even some of last year's winners will take their certificates. So I'm just going to print them all up at the same time.
Okay.
And mail them out at the end of the week, and hopefully do it again next year.
Yeah. Are you going to include your autograph on it?
Yeah, that might taint the certificate, but yes, that's these things work.
Okay, good. Good. All right, so what I want to do is go through each day. We had 6 days of Kunkel Awards. So I'm going to go through and talk sometimes briefly about each of them. Let me make sure I have my list here. I have so many windows with the live stream going that...
well, can I make an announcement before we go through all this?
You absolutely can.
So there's a great likelihood that next year I will not be the director of these awards. So more than happy to talk about them this time. But one of the judges from this year, we were talking about having her take over the directing. So she wouldn't be a judge next year. She'd be the person that organizes all this. And I'll help her. But because she's younger, hipper, a gamer, smarter and more attractive than me, she can, and with a lot less baggage, she can reinvent these awards, and I think she'll do a really good job. So I'm going to try to announce that next week. We're still working out the details.
Wonderful. So that's an exclusive here for those of you watching.
Well, I just think it's important. I mean, I have no problem starting this up, but some of the criticism is really valid, which is, I am, as much as I learn about the gaming scene, I am still Jane Goodall among the apes. I am.
Oh, thanks.
I am maybe as much as I might be accepted, I am not one of. So, better to pick a gamer who doesn't make money within gaming journalism, who is a good journalist, have them direct the awards. So the judges are all gamers, but now someone is going to be running the whole contest. I think they'll be able to talk to everyone, fresh. And I think it'll be good for the awards.
Great. So will she, when you announce that next week, is she going to start the whole process, get control of the website?
Yep. I'm not bailing on her. I mean, I'll help do whatever she wants because believe it or not, I don't have a life and I don't like episodic TV shows. So this is fun.
What?
I can't watch like TV shows where I got to remember characters from one week to the next. I'm old. I can't.
What about The Sopranos?
Yeah, it's just a lot of people.
I've lost all my respect for you, Koretzky.
You had respect for me.
I did, but that's gone.
Yeah. Well, this to me is entertainment. So I like arguing about journalism, and I think it's fun. So I will still help. I'm not. Someone asked, like among the judges, like, are you just like fed up and leaving? And I said, no, I truly like this. I just think it's better if someone else is in charge. I'll just help.
Sure. Okay, now on Monday was the best feature video. And let me scroll down here. This is one of those which I had the problem with. I had some little criticism for. Just kind of talking about what we're talking about. That I'm not exactly sure if the judges are really knowledgeable about the gaming industry and especially the impact with some of these stories.
For instance?
For instance, the criticism for the strategic butt coverings video. Now, I'm not saying that video should have won. I think the video that won, which was Danny O'Dwyer's Doom Resurrected, Designing a First Impression, which was a very good video. Of course, it kind of should be since he's getting $25,000 a month through Patreon. But
good, wow.
Yeah, he's doing good work. And he's getting rewarded for it. So, yeah, that was a very good video. But I thought you talked about the criticism for strategic butt coverings, and the judges weren't really clear about that video, that it was a parody of the Feminist Frequency videos. And I understand that criticism, but to me that criticism comes from a place of people not knowing. They're not the insiders, that I am. Because within 10 seconds, I knew exactly what that video was about.
What you just said was the most important part. You're one of the insiders. One of the judges knew that topic really well, but still hated the video because the idea of journalism is not just to speak to insiders. Why just preach to the converted? Where's the nobility in that? So the idea is you should do your journalism in such a way that insiders still get something out of it, but outsiders can get into it. And that video, while the judges really relished the topic, that's a meaty topic that should be delved into, the journalistic presentation wasn't good enough. It wasn't even an either-or situation, right? I mean, making it that way so you couldn't figure out what's going on, even some of the commenters couldn't figure out what's going on in that video, wasn't a trade-off to accomplish something else. It was just not as good as one that would have spelled out exactly what's happening so that more people could understand it.
Yeah. I understand that point. I was always taught, the first rule of writing is know your audience. So to me, sometimes it's most of the time when I'm writing, I know that I'm writing, or now producing videos, for an audience that almost always enthusiast audience who is very highly knowledgeable, very technical. They know their stuff with gaming. So what you're saying is, I should still write my stuff, from the perspective of what we in the inside call normies.
No, I didn't. But if you submit it for a Kunkel Award, which is designed for the gaming, I don't know if the gaming normies, I don't know what would you call the larger gaming audience that isn't as into it as you are. So they're not
the non-enthusiast.
Right. So the purpose of the Kunkel Awards is not. It's the difference between mainstream journalism and alternative journalism. I mean, in the gaming world, the Kunkel Awards are supposed to recognize stories that dig deep into topics for anyone interested in gaming. Down the road, there might be a category that is specifically for that. So, for instance, in the mainstream journalism world, the Pulitzers or whatever, you could win a SBJ has a bunch of awards. You could win something for sports journalism, right? And it would be only sports people are going to understand that. My wife wouldn't understand what the hell that was. But that's a separate category. There are some sports stories that win general awards because they just use sports as a jumping off point to explain a bigger story where it isn't about stats and RBIs or whatever. So for this particular story, or for what you do, if it's submitted for a Kunkel Award, then it's being judged for that. Maybe there should be a separate set of awards for your particular space. That'd be fine too.
Sure. That's perfectly fair. I never heard of the Kunkels, being more of a mainstream. Well, I guess I never considered that. So.
Well, I mean, Society of Professional Journalists is. It's. Let's just put it this way. Even in the journalism world, it's not known as a hip organization. It's been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's got a code of ethics. It's really rigid sometimes, and I think that rigidity is good, because if we reward something and you disagree with it and it starts an argument, we got no problem with that, because at least people are arguing about the substance of journalism instead of accusing us of some grand conspiracy when we're not that organized enough to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now let's move on to Tuesday, the best news video of 2016. Before we go on to that, could you define feature versus news?
Yeah, so one way to define that, and obviously these lines are not really bright, they can get a little blurry, but a feature story is usually not about something that happened now. It can be a behind-the-scenes thing. It's a profile on somebody. It's not investigative. It doesn't have to dive deep with 15 different sources. It can be some of the best feature videos. Some of them didn't win, but they were really fascinating. They were just profiles on people, people that played, people that designed games. That's not a news story. It could run any time. I guess one way you could look at a feature story as opposed to a news story, feature stories have longer shelf lives. I mean, you could go back and look at a profile of somebody from 10 years ago and it would hold up pretty well. Whereas if it's a news story about something like strategic butt coverings or something, like if that was more of a news story, then it would be dated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the best news video, the very first subtitle you have on there is "Ugh, this category is a mess."
That's a judge's comment.
Yes. Yes, wow. It is in quotes. So yeah, it's a judge's comment. Why was that category a mess?
I think because by and large, the videos in gaming journalism are more suited for feature stories. Like those, even last year, those were stronger because news is hard and sometimes boring, and sometimes it's easier to do that with the written word. And the news videos that we got in, because it's such a production hassle, just like you're trying to do this stream, a lot of times the people that are putting them together they're making as much as I'm making now. It's just a pain in the ass to get multiple sources. That was the biggest problem, that people would just say stuff like, this is the way it is. Mm-hmm. And like, dude, back that up. Like, talk to some people. So that was what pissed off the judges, is that there just wasn't enough proof for the claims that were being made. You can do that with opinions. A lot of streams, a lot of videos are opinions. Cool, no problem. But when you submit it for a news video, you got to back it up.
Okay. And the winner of this award was one of my favorite people who I've kind of gotten into it with, Patricia Hernandez, with the Not Safe for Work World of Skyrim and Fallout nudity mods. And I believe one of the quotes from her videos was titties everywhere, I believe. Did you see all these videos?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she definitely has a niche. And here, again, I have a little criticism. I don't know if I'd say criticism, but you mentioned that people wanted to like a video by Ethan Klein, which is H3 Productions, called Deception, Lies, and Counter-Strike Go. Now, that video certainly had... Well, let's talk about the impact of a story, because Patricia Hernandez's video, well, I think it was well constructed, doesn't exactly have much of an impact. There are nude mods out there. I mean, that basically sums it up. The video with Deception Lies in CSGO actually broke the story of the gambling subculture within Counter-Strike. And it caused some major industry changes. I believe it shut down some websites as a result.
I actually, what's so funny is when I saw that video, I didn't realize it was first because I had read stories that so I was like, oh, I didn't know that's how it started. So it was
you're
right. The fact of that was amazing, which is why the judges were so mad, because it could have been, the construction of it could have been awesome. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but Ethan Klein just got in trouble with. He accused the Wall Street Journal. Well, we'll talk about the whole PewDiePie situation later. But there's this whole YouTube versus Wall Street Journal situation, and Ethan Klein accused one of those authors of doctoring a screenshot because he thought he had proof, and it turned out he was wrong. So he had to retract it, and he did. But we'll talk about that stuff a little bit later. So, okay, on Wednesday, which was my birthday, by the way, we had college gaming journalism. And the lesson we take from that is that Harvard sucks. That's pretty much it, right?
I just think it's funny because I'm a college dropout, but my grandfather went to Harvard. So, I guess I don't know how much. I'm not very objective on this one, but man, that was scary.
Yeah, those were some fun examples of writing in there.
And I can't tell. See, those were submitted anonymously, so I don't know if someone from Harvard was quite proud of them and submitted them, which would make them raging morons, or if some astute observer found those and said, I'm going to submit this to a Kunkel Award, hoping those guys will chew this up and spit it out. I'm not sure which. Either scenario seems plausible to me.
Yeah, who knows? The winner was Cosplayers and Gamers Flock to Eagle Land by Aiden Strawhan. And I've been in contact with her, and she was very happy with with winning the award. So,
yeah, I talked to her too. One thing I hope that doesn't happen is that people would read that and go, this isn't so good. This isn't as good as one of the other categories, and realize that when it comes to judging college contests, they're obviously not graded against a professional category. Mm-hmm. That award is judged on best of college students and the ones that we think would be great pros someday. No one is fully formed in college or at that young age. You always get better. So it wasn't that her story would have beaten the best story from a pro. It's like college football players versus professional football players. You judge them on what they're doing now, but also their potential for the future. And I really feel like that chick could be a really good gaming journalist someday.
Yeah, I liked her story. Especially as a college student. At college you're on campus and you don't really get out much, or at least I didn't. I stayed on campus the whole time. So going out there and getting a story like that can be difficult, and I thought she did a really good job. So,
agreed.
Okay, moving on to Thursday and the best feature writing of 2016. The winner was two winners, a tie. Imposter Syndrome: Game Developers Who Feel Like Frauds by Richard Moss of Polygon, and Punktendo: The 8-Bit Punk Games You Didn't Play by Ben Saylor of Killscreen. And the comments I've received on this are some people, as you might know, Killscreen is now pretty much dead.
Yep.
They've been going through. They haven't been paying their writers very much, very often, I guess.
All.
And they have removed. I believe they've now removed pretty much all content from their site except for some kind of a store or something. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so when you go there now, it's just like they're trying to sell you stuff. It's really weird.
Yeah. So some people thought that the SBJ shouldn't be rewarding a site that does that?
Well, first of all, we were laughing because we were thinking, like, man, what if the Kunkel Awards are so fucked up that every time you win one, we kill off a site? Because when we were looking at the site, we were obviously the links worked when we were doing the judging. Our basic attitude is this: if a writer kicks ass and he has a shitty boss, we're not going to not give him an award to punish a shitty boss. So that was a good story. We're not rewarding the shitty boss. We're rewarding the person who did the story. So a lot of journalists end up working for places that end up mistreating them or others. So I don't know what the alternative would be. How do you reward a good story without like mentioning the place where it ran? I really don't know the solution to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know the solution to that either, and I'm sure. Well, I would believe the guy was a freelancer. Killscreen ran, I think, mostly freelance work. So I don't know about. I wasn't even able to read this story since the website is dead, and I didn't.
Well, if this would have been a situation where the site was still up and running and they were screwing over freelancers, then the Kunkel Award for that for Nintendo would have been great, because then it would have drawn more attention to the fact that they're scummy and not paying their writers. I've been an editor before. I've worked places that didn't pay writers, and I actually got fired from one of those places because I refused to turn over the content until they pay the writers. I basically held the content hostage. So this is not an uncommon problem in our world, and I hope if that guy got screwed over for his money, he at least can get another gig and he won an award, as dubious as it might be.
Yeah. Now, the other article, The Imposter Syndrome, Game Developers Who Feel Like Frauds. I have to admit, I don't want to bash on Polygon or anything, but I have to admit that was kind of a boring story to me. I thought it was very well constructed, very well put together, but I don't really care if somebody feels like they're not successful, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably why it was a tie. It was a well-done story, and the topic. I mean, some topics will interest people and some won't. Mm-hmm. It's just the nature of the beast. But it was a well-constructed story. But like you mentioned Impact before, I think the judges pretty much liked the Nintendo story better. It was a little rougher around the edges. Mm-hmm. So that's why there was a tie.
Okay. And I like the untold story of the Ghostbusters video game that was almost a masterpiece. I thought that was a pretty good article.
That was.
So, yeah. Okay, now we move on to Friday, which I think might be just the best day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, clearly you awarded based on looks and aesthetics here, so I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're right. Say right.
Yeah. And you guys also roasted the crap out of me, which I thought was very fun. I got onto, when I found out, I got onto Twitter and I saw some people saying, "Hey, congrats, Brad, but did you read it?" I said, no, not yet. Not yet. So that was for Excellence in News Reporting. And that was my article that won a Gamer's Guide to the 2016 presidential election, Video Game Violence, where I asked the candidates, or I tried to ask them, what their stance is on video game violence. And I'll be honest, I thought that story, I wrote it as a feature, not a news piece. But
it becomes a news piece because of everything that's going on. I mean, if the election was maybe exciting,
and I did get relevant quotes. So
I mean, the thing that the judges just want to harp on, both the gaming press and gaming readers, is the most important thing you can do in journalism is get other people's quotes, get other people talking. Most of the problems with journalism is when they just don't talk to enough people and let them actually speak. So you did that. The judges like that. You did that better than the others. The organization, the writing, to them, to the judges, to SPJ, to most journalists, the most important thing in our society, given our attention spans are woefully short, is say as much as you can in a few words as possible. And they felt like you fell a little short there. There's a very famous old book of writing called The Elements of Style. And in that book, there's a very famous part where it says, writing should have no unnecessary words, like a painting should have no unnecessary lines, and a machine should have no unnecessary parts. So that's the part that they thought that was weak, but they thought the idea was inspired, they thought the reporting was excellent, they thought the writing could have been better.
You say on here that there were, about 90 articles considered here? Are people not getting sources for their stories? Because this, to me, is just the basics. I mean, I don't ever really want to run a story if I don't have a quote. A couple quotes.
Yeah, you and me, man. I don't. Some of the submissions, obviously, some were submitted by publications themselves. Some were submitted by readers, and look, I'm not slagging on the readers that submitted stuff because I think that's awesome. I'm happy they did it. But what we want to teach them is that when you read a news story, even if you agree with it, it is going to be better if that story has multiple sources, even somebody you don't agree with. One of the things I have a lot of conversations with, especially gamers, is that since it's a very polarized space and people have very strongly held opinions, they like stories that feature only their side. And I'm trying to convince them that if it features the other side, yet is still convincing, that's a bigger victory than not quoting the other side.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, what happened with Kotaku? So Kotaku submitted, a half a dozen articles for this category, and all of them were from 2015?
No, I fucked up. I actually apologized to Stephen Totillo. So this is what happens when you have a volunteer director and now someone else will be doing a better job. And I guess this is okay to say, but so Stephen Totillo submitted some articles on behalf of Kotaku and did so over the course of 2 days. Somewhere in those 2 days, for my dumb luck, someone else submitted 5 other articles, and all of those were from the previous year. He didn't do it. I didn't look. I just looked at the first and the last. It was Totillo, and I just grabbed everything in the middle and figured it was him. I didn't actually look to see that, like, oh shit, he didn't do that.
Was he mad?
Well, I wasn't happy, and I actually changed the blog post, and I apologize because this is such a highly polarized thing, and I didn't want him to think that like I was jacking him for no reason. So I just said, look, that's a screw up. I got no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I'm admitting it here. So no, someone else did that, and but I'm glad it still happened because it was a good discussion among the judges. Like, no, you can't repost something. That's like re-releasing a movie from 5 years ago and hoping to get an Oscar.
Yeah. Now, my site partner, Oscar Gonzalez, he is a student. He's making me talk about this. He is a student at CUNY Master's School of Journalism. And his problem with this award in particular was when they criticized me for burying the lead. Let me find his quote. He says, "How the hell do you bury a source and a thesis? Who even says thesis in a newsroom?"
That's true. That judge said it, but you're right. I don't ever hear that. If I ever hear the word thesis, it's usually preceded by the word fucking.
Okay,
but I'm accurately quoting a judge. I think what they would have preferred is, I think the most valid criticism of what you wrote journalistically is you have all this good shit further in the story, but I know from reading the headline and just the first paragraph that all that good shit exists. What journalists got to do, just like good movies, just like good novels, like you allude to the stuff that you briefly, foreplay. You're going to like tell me the really good stuff's coming up later. I talked to all these candidates. I wanted to know that up higher because the way it comes across at first is, oh, this is going to be this guy Brad talking about like his opinion on some crap. When it's not, it's just you did some really good reporting. You just didn't let me know that.
honestly, that piece was a bit tongue-in-cheek because I felt, the whole time I was thinking, it's a little bit ridiculous, talking about this one issue and going to these candidates and asking them, what's your stance on video game violence?
Why is that tongue in cheek? I once wrote a story profiling Jack Thompson, and hung out with him for an afternoon, and this bitch about politicians. So you might have done it tongue in cheek. I don't think we read it that way.
Yeah, well, it was tongue in cheek because it's kind of ridiculous. Like who would vote for a candidate based on their stance on video game violence? So
you'd be surprised.
And of course, I also included the line in there that Hillary Clinton is the safe bet to win the presidency. So, yeah. Okay, moving on to the final day. Today, Monday. We had the worst story of 2016. Can you talk a little? I heard from some freelance journalists that they don't even like that this is a category.
Yeah, so, I know, and I look. I don't blame them either. I mean, I can be all cavalier about this because it's not my livelihood. And we talked about this before we did it, because it's kind of like, if we want to get gaming journalists to believe in the Kunkels, is this really what you would do? And I think the consensus was good gaming journalists have nothing to worry about. If you do this even halfway right, you won't come up in that category.
Yeah, the thing is, all of us journalists really, we're pretty much all ego-driven narcissists, aren't we? And I have to admit, I kind of thought, I'm wondering if they're going to put one of my stories in there. And I kind of had it in my head that if they do, then I know I nominated one piece for this category. That was the only nomination I had. And
really?
Yeah, I nominated, and it didn't win, and I'm a little upset about that, but not too upset because these stories are truly awful. And so I knew, I kind of knew, but I think I heard from a couple freelance journalists, they're like, "Oh, I'm wondering if my story is going to end up on the worst list." So,
well, I think a lot of freelancers were nervous. A lot of gaming journalists in general were nervous because they thought that we would pick the worst story because it was bad for the take or the angle that it had. Like, a lot of the people that submitted for worst story, you could tell, were hardcore on one side or another side of an issue. So there were a lot of submissions saying, a lot of submissions of stories that purported that gaming was either anti-feminist or attacking feminists. Like, you could see that those two sides of the issue were submitting stories because they disagreed with the premise of the story. Mm-hmm. We're not going there. I mean, it's got to not follow basic journalism rules. And even though the story that won, I screwed up and it was from 2015, and the judges didn't notice either. I think we didn't even bother looking at the date because we were so enamored with the shittiness of that particular story, because that is one of the cardinal sins of journalism, is that journalists that make the story about them, Americans hate that more than anything else. Like, look at me. Like, that is just, you hate that on Facebook, you hate that in journalism, you hate that with movie stars, you hate that with sports people. So, like, that story was just terrible all across the board, and it didn't matter what its take was. If anybody writes a story that starts out that way, even if you politically agree with it, it will win as the worst story.
Yes. I have no argument on there. That was a bad story. The one I submitted, I actually wrote an article about how bad it was. It was Catherine Cross' piece where she accused Notch, who is the creator of Minecraft. He's a billionaire now. She accused him of harassing somebody, and he'd never harassed. If you actually did research into it, you see that he never harassed this person. And so she tried to correct her article 3 times and got it wrong each time. So that was the one I was hoping hoping that would win. But I can't argue with this Rock Band 4. For those of you who don't know, Colin Campbell wrote a Rock Band 4. God, I guess it was a review where he went to an event and he's talking about how he was at the event eating the food, talking about politics in the Philippines, and he doesn't even like the rock band genre.
He doesn't like loud music.
Yeah, or loud music. So it was truly awful.
That's like a vegetarian reviewing a barbecue joint. I mean, you don't send that person to the review. I mean, you have them write other stuff. So that was horrendous on so many levels.
So now there was a little controversial statement you have in there. If you fell off that roof, you're saying this to Colin Campbell, no one would mourn you. Ouch.
Maybe that was. I admit it. Maybe I went too far, but I was very emotional when I wrote that.
Yeah, that was a little hard. Of course, the other categories. Why isn't it called No Woman's Sky? Somebody is saying that article was a joke, and I'm not sure if it was or not.
How is it a joke? I mean, is it a joke that they took it as a joke, or that Jezebel meant it as a joke?
That Jezebel meant it as a joke.
Well, if they meant it as a joke, nothing is worse than failed humor. It seemed to be like, where's the punchline in that? I mean, it didn't run on April 1st, did it?
No, it didn't. I'm pretty sure it didn't.
Now I'm thinking, like, oh my God.
No, it didn't, because that game came out later. Yeah, to me, that's, if it is a joke, it's not really discernibly different from other Jezebel articles. So, it seems like an article they would write. So I don't know if it's a joke, it was meant as a joke or not. Obviously it did not succeed if it was.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is it's not even opinion. It's a stance from the publication that we're not going to do something, and that is legit. If a publication, it's a private enterprise, they don't got to do anything they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to announce you're not going to do something, you should kind of explain it, because you're opening yourself up for criticism. I'm not even taking a position on, like, whether they should or shouldn't do it. That's their call. But man, they did not explain it well. They did not interview anybody. If you aren't going to write about something, you should still do the reporting yourself. So to say that the title of this game sucks, I thought it'd be really funny if they actually did play the game later and then find out that it was actually, would be great. Someone should actually do this if they really want to. They should come out with a game that has a title that Jezebel won't like, but make the game totally feminist. And then when Jezebel says, we're not even going to review this game, like, sandbag them and say, well, did you look at the game? Because it's awesome for you. If you're going to not do something, it's not an excuse to not look into it. You look into it, then you decide you don't want to do it, and you explain to your readers exactly why. And then you do not at the end say, like, hey, we have a sister publication, so go over there, read the review, because we still want money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, make a stand or don't make a stand. I can respect it either way. I just can't respect it halfway.
Yeah. And of course, the last article mentioned was, my Gamergate silence helped elect Trump, and other truths. And I remember making fun of that article big time on Twitter. Oh, was that awful. There's not much to say about that. One thing I will say about that, which makes sense to me now, is when I first started looking into Gamergate and people said, you're just trying to make money from your Patreon account, and I didn't know what that was. It now makes sense to me, because I've seen so many people on both sides of the issue try to cash in. And that particular story where the writer links to their own stuff in the first frickin' paragraph, like, wow, it kind of dawned on me all at once. Like, I'm really slow, so it took 2 frickin' years, but it's like, okay, this makes sense to me now. Yeah. I did an article where I looked at the fundraising of Well, it's part of my book, but here I am plugging my crap now. But it's part of my book where I looked at the finances from Gamergate and the people that are making money through Patreon donations, and of course I am doing it now too. But I looked at the Gamergate victims, as they're called. Of course, people in Gamergate don't think they're actually victims. I don't care about that. Whatever. And over 2 years, they've each made right around $100,000 or more. So yeah, there's some money in that.
I just look at this whole like Gamergate or any other controversy. To me, is like a war, and the people that make money are arms dealers. So people and arms dealers make money off of both sides. They're pretty agnostic. Whoever will buy their weapons. So I kind of looked at that whole thing as a virtual war with virtual weapons that are being virtually bought and sold.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. I might steal that for my book. But yeah, it's a total culture war. Some of the freelance journalists I spoke with actually said that the Kunkels are there to appease Gamergaters. That's the problem they had with the awards.
I've heard that, and I accept that as criticism, but I guess my response would be, why? I'm not making money off of Gamergate. I don't. It's not like I'm stroking my ego with this based on the comments. I don't hang out with anyone in Gamergate. I live in a gated community and just hang out with my wife. I don't have a lot of friends. I don't play video games. The one I play by myself. So,
oh man, now you're making me sad. You don't watch The Sopranos? Oh.
I know. It's a really sad life, Brad. As your elder, don't end up like me. But I understand where that's coming from, because I did engage Gamergate, and of course, along the way, made probably a lot of mistakes. But I don't understand what the reasoning is. Like, why would I do that? I guess the one response I have heard is, okay, Koretzky, we believe you. You're not making any money off of this. You're not stroking your ego. You're just an idiot, which that might be true. But that's one reason. If I hand over the Kunkels to someone else, at some point it's like dating, right? If there are 3 Kunkel directors and there are some people that still think it's leaning towards Gamergate, at some point you got to look at it and say, well, maybe it's not the people I'm dating. Maybe it's me. So the next person who's doing this is young. Wasn't involved in the Gamergate thing, had nothing to do with SPJ Airplay, doesn't care, cares about video games. So I understand that. I think one reason it's good for me to step aside as the director, and again, I'm not a judge, is for that reason. I can tell you the judges, none of the judges were involved in SPJ Airplay. They care about journalism and video games. So I think part of it might be an image thing because I'm still involved in it. Mm-hmm. And I hope that by next year and the years after, because it's not going away. I think some people thought if you just heap a lot of criticism on something, you can kill it. But I don't think that's going to happen with the Kunkel Awards. So in the future, next year, maybe people still have the same disagreements. Like the disagreements you just spouted and we just talked about, mm-hmm. Those are all valid. I mean, I just admitted I made some mistakes. You have a point of view that's journalistically worth arguing about. You're not taking off your shoe and banging it on the table. All that could happen next year, and the image of the Kunkels might be better because I won't be the face of it. And the person you'll be interviewing will be a much more attractive person than me, who's more articulate about gaming.
Is she old? Is she into like old gaming guys who have like no money?
You know what? I don't know, Brad. But I could.
Okay.
I could make an introduction. You guys could,
Thanks.
chat.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Okay, now let's get to some of the many comments that I've looked at. One of them is from a guy I know. He follows me, Hedger, and he wrote this right on the SPJ blog. He said this last week has been completely eye-opening as to how little the SPJ judges understand the audience being served. We don't want what the current media presents. He said, "This is the fourth day in a row where you attempt to take the standards and sensibilities of the generic, ill-informed mainstream media consumer and apply it to the works designed and marketed to highly informed, highly engaged, active enthusiasts." So it's a little bit about kind of what I was saying before.
Oh yeah, and you know what? If that's his opinion, that's valid. If the Kunkel Awards are featuring writing that bores him, that defies all critique. You can't critique someone's personal taste.
Sure.
What I would encourage, well, the Kunkels are always going to do that mainstream thing because I think the mainstream gets beaten up like top 40 music gets beaten up, like anything mainstream gets beaten up. But I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's wrong. I think there's a set of standards. SBJ has a code of ethics. It's pretty old. You may not like it, but I hope you see the internal logic of it. And if you don't like it, then what I hope the Kunkel Awards actually does is, instead of trying to dominate the scene as the first and only video game journalism award program, maybe there should be one that's alternative. I worked for a while in alternative magazines, and they have their own awards. There's something called the Association of Alternative Newspapers. And they have their own version of the Pulitzers because, obviously, they think the Pulitzers are too mainstream. So instead of looking at this like it's a battle against the Kunkels, I would actually support and, help in any way I could. If someone else wants to create another set of awards, as long as it's journalistically sound, as long as it's not rewarding bad writing and bad reporting because it supports your political viewpoint, if it's doing something alternative and it's still journalistic, go for it. I'll help.
Okay. And on Reddit, some of the people said, ask how Koretzky thinks about the lack of coverage of the awards on gaming websites like Kotaku or Games Industry.
Yeah, I don't know, because in the real world, newspapers try not to. They will mention that they won an award, but they don't want to do it too much because then they get backlash from the readers saying like, dude, it's not about you. Tell me some shit. That's your job, is to tell me stuff. So newspapers, like the other SPJ awards that I'm involved in, when they win one, they will say we won an award, but it'll be like a brief on page 9.
Yeah.
I don't see the gaming websites acknowledging that they won a Kunkel Award. Then again, I don't know exactly how they would do that. And the Kunkels aren't very old, and they're still controversial. I have a feeling in 5 to 10 years, this will be like so legit that it'll be boring. It'll be some people. You'll be able to tell people like this was controversial in the beginning. It's almost like telling people that the Pulitzers were controversial in the beginning because Joseph Pulitzer was kind of a slimeball. The Pulitzer, people don't know this. The Pulitzer Prizes were founded by a guy who was like pretty much a sensational asshole, who then decided, he saw the light, like, coming to Jesus right before you're dead. And he decided like, oh my God, I should do something for responsible journalism. So he made all this money in sensationalism, put it all towards good journalism, and then croaked. So maybe that's what will happen with the Kunkel Awards, except I hope I don't have to die.
Okay, another says, ask him about the Kunkels rewarding publications with blatant ethical issues with regards to undisclosed conflicts of interest such as Polygon or Kotaku, or one that hasn't been paying its writers kill screen, which we've kind of already covered somewhat.
Yeah, I think the same thing goes. I mean, we talked about some of that at SBJ Airplay, but if someone writes a good story, I am not going to punish them by not recognizing them because of where they work.
What about if they have a history? For example, Patricia Hernandez, the Gamergaters have they have a website called Deep Freeze where they list all of her conflicts of interest where she has undisclosed, and some of them are objectively bad. Some of them they spoke about at Airplay. And
no, I know Deep Freeze, and I will say this: if someone is a complete asshole and writes a killer piece of journalism, we're rewarding just the killer piece of journalism because, one, that's what it's all about, and two, let's say someone is a complete asshole, they win an award for a great piece of journalism. Our hope is they say, as a greedy son of a bitch, I'm going to keep doing this awesome journalism thing because it'll feed my ego much more than being an asshole. So that's how I think we look at it. We don't judge everyone's history. We judge, hate the sin, love the sinner, I guess, in reverse. I mean, if you do something good, I don't care if you rape puppies.
Oh, God. Oh, there goes the monetization for this video. I'd like to know about Koretzky's opinion on journalists' increasing tendency towards ideologically, politically motivated malicious reporting and their public embracing of it.
If anyone does that, I don't consider them a journalist.
But that kind of is a bit about new media, though, isn't it? I mean, they're certainly, there's a mixture of news with opinion. It's
that's exactly why, when people criticize mainstream journalism or SPJ for being kind of rot up the ass, is I'm happy about that. When I was younger, I was an alternative journalist. I started a couple of alternative magazines and sold them because that was the most radical thing to do. Today, the most radical thing I can do is be a stick-up-the-ass journalist that wants to do just ethical, straightforward journalism. I have no problem with opinions, with analysts, all that stuff. It's just that there's so much of that now that being a traditional journalist is actually more rare and therefore alternative.
Yes, that's actually one of the things I've tried to do is, you have to be different to make it. So, I've tried to be, kind of adhere to my roots as a newspaper journalist, and that is actually different in this gaming industry. So, who knew? Someone wants to know, what was the biggest or most interesting story of the year?
I think the most interesting story to me was a Breitbart story that the judges wanted to like, even though the judges don't like Breitbart.
Was it the one about that censorship in that game?
Yeah, because I thought the judges were really good about that. That judge the story, don't judge anything else but the story in front of you. And I felt like that could have been a really good story. And I would love to see. I love discussions about journalism, and I would love to see a discussion ensue. I would love Breitbart to do a story that actually won, because it was just a damn good story. Because
you wouldn't be concerned about people say, "Oh, the Kunkels, screw them," and they award Breitbart. How good can the Kunkels be?
But that would be a great journalism discussion, wouldn't it? Be like, then I would get to say, look at the actual story. That story is really good. The rest of the site you might think sucks. I have a lot of problems with some of the stuff that's on there, but that story was really good. And I see Breitbart do stories that are almost good. And I don't know if they can't get that last little part because of something dogmatic in the operation, or just because it's just not been around long enough with enough reporters to know it. But that story to me was the most interesting because the judges dealt with it objectively, only with the story. They didn't consider anything else but the story. So it's easy to do that when it's something you agree with. It's harder when it's something you disagree with. And so I'm glad they handled it the way they did.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to keep you forever, so why don't we move on from the Kunkels and into the first, there's definitely going to be a third year for the Kunkels, correct?
Yep.
That's
yeah. I see no reason why it's going anywhere. It's certainly we don't need a budget.
Now, are there going to be any particular changes to the way judging is done or anything like that? Is that all up to the new director?
It's all up to the new director, although I have a feeling her first year she probably would keep a lot of this stuff around. But they might change the categories. That worst story of the year. That might survive or it might not.
Yeah. So lobby for it if we like it.
I liked it because I think I think Americans learn more by negative reinforcement than positive reinforcement.
Yeah. I think it's good to call attention to those articles. Even if that one was in 2015, it was so bad it deserved that award for 2 years in a row. So,
yeah, it transcended the year.
It did. As you said, features, like that, they transcend time, and that one will be known as awful for a long time. Yeah, I'm interested to know if Colin Campbell has anything to say about it. He of course has me blocked on Twitter, so I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, let's move on to the PewDiePie situation, which you have done your research on today.
Yeah, I'd heard about this vaguely, and then when I was talking to you, thanks for sending me the Wall Street Journal article. I don't have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, and I think it's kind of funny how there must be a way around the paywall, because how do all the gamers get access? I can't. Most of the gamers I know are not Wall Street Journal kind of people. So how do they get the story in the first place?
I believe it's probably someone who does have access to it, and they archive the article, and you can share it through the archive.
Maybe I'm being very stereotypical about my impression of gamers. Maybe they are getting the Wall Street Journal, taking their stock prices.
Yeah. Well, my survey of Gamergate revealed that their average age is 30 years old. So, yeah. And they actually make more money than the average person. So, gamers, well, like me, they can be older. So, we have a Wall Street Journal article about PewDiePie. First question I want to ask you is, did you watch the PewDiePie video?
Yeah.
Did you laugh at the death to all Jews part?
No.
Did you find it funny at all?
I didn't find it funny or particularly offensive. I just found it boring.
Okay.
I guess it's because shock value stuff, and I'm Jewish. I was bar mitzvah in it. I don't find, when you get to be my age and you've just seen a lot of the same humor, like where it's, the joke is nothing but shock. There's not like any other funny insight to it.
Yeah, the joke is really his reaction to it, making a funny face, but that's kind of his thing, and of course he is hugely successful doing that.
Yeah, who am I to criticize? The guy's got like
millions and millions of dollars. Yeah.
So but for me personally, I guess when I was 20 and I first saw someone did something just to shock the mainstream, it was funny. But like 30 years later, it's like you gotta like do something with it, because it just doesn't do much for me. I mean, it was just easy.
Do you consider it anti-Semitic?
Well, I don't consider it pro-Semitic.
But is it anti-Semitic?
Yeah, so this gets to the whole, like, first of all, I don't know what's in his head. I read everything. I read his side of it, heard his side of it. I don't know what's in his head, but I wasn't impressed. However, I think he has a right to do it, and I think Disney has a right to say, dude, too much for us. So what I find interesting is in your editorial on it, you said somewhere near the end that most of the hype is from opinion columnists just breathlessly hyping this thing. And I thought, well, yeah, that's what opinion columnists are supposed to. Like, the last thing you want from an opinion columnist is, on the one hand.
Yeah, but a lot of them are not just opinion columnists. I mean, a lot of them are, some of them are.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
The Wall Street Journal article.
Yes.
If you were if you were giving it a grade, what grade would you give it?
I thought it was a good article, mostly. My problem I've had with it, and I've said this before, is when did these journalists, and it surprised me that there are three of these guys, three professional Wall Street Journal reporters.
Yeah.
Sharing a byline, on PewDiePie.
Well, by the way, that usually happens when they want to get a story done really quickly. So they just divide the work. Like you talk to one person, you talk to another, you talk to another.
Yeah, but I think this was where the three guys watched his videos, numerous videos, looking for anti-Semitic content, which he has done, this kind of humor. Well, it's kind of his thing almost. Anyway, my question with them is, when did they try to contact him? Did they try to contact him before contacting Disney? And also, I'm wondering,
why does that matter?
Well,
I'm a journalist. I'm going to put in as many calls as I can. Whoever calls me back first, I'm talking to them. This story, I like this story because they tried to reach him when they couldn't. I'm counting like 2, 4, 6, 8, like a full third of this quarter of the story is his side, like him saying basically, that the media needs. I mean, there's criticism in a story from the media about the media. I think there's a difference between a joke and an actual like death to all Jews. He says the material is portrayed in jest. So this story quoted his side of the story, which is something that we always talk about. Mm-hmm. And it quotes Disney's side of the story. I thought it was a good article.
Yeah, my issue with it is when, as I'm sure you have done in the past, where you've researched a story, going to Disney, what kind of a quote are you going to get from them other than this? The outcome of it is it was not any complaint from any of his viewers. It was because the Wall Street Journal talked to Disney that they dropped him.
So you're saying that Disney, if it wasn't for the Wall Street Journal, never would have found out about this content?
No. They might have, and I think I said that in my editorial, that they would have dropped him sooner or later, I believe. But they did specifically say because of this article, that is why they dropped him. And to me, my biggest critique of it is that the journalist became part of the story here.
And you're right, that sometimes happens, but the alternative is what? Not to call Disney?
Well, I don't think you're going to get anything useful from them, though. I mean, you're either going to get them...
That's the other side of the story. You have to call Disney. They're the people paying the money. That's like, follow the money is the first rule in journalism.
But the story here wasn't really Disney. It's the only story here is Disney dropping PewDiePie. If Disney had said, whatever, we don't care, or give them some blank PR, bullcrap that we've all received before, there's no story here really, other than hey, PewDiePie tells these jokes.
If Disney would have kept him, that would be a story too, because they would be keeping someone who's doing that level of offensiveness, which may not be offensive to you and to some of your audience, but is offensive to other people. So,
sure.
I mean, to me, like, look, I once had a friend who was doing a story on someone who died, I think in a car accident, and called the family and didn't realize that the cops hadn't told.
Ooh, ooh.
I mean, that's brutal, right? I mean,
ooh.
So, yeah, it sucks. It's like that'll just rip your soul right out.
Mm-hmm.
But the job of a journalist is when you are working on a story to call all sides to get their take. And by the way, when you call someone whose family died, what you're really looking for is tell us how awesome that person was, because this might be the only chance to tell what a wonderful person they are. In the case of this story, it's the opposite, right? I mean, hey, this guy did all this stuff. You're the ones paying the money. What do you think? If you are acknowledging that what he's doing is for shock value, I don't understand how people can then be mad that people are shocked.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't mind that. I just think that the tone, especially after the story that the three writers took, I don't know if you saw, they made a video about it, a Wall Street Journal video where they have this like haunting music, and it was a whole big production.
Well, don't get me started on. I'm traditional and old enough that like when things make it from print to video, and there are TV people or production people involved, and it's like, that's too boring, we got to jazz it up a little bit. I'm not saying that's happened here, but in general, I am not impressed when stories make it to video because it's got to be jazzed up. I am judging this particular story and the things that I've read spinning off from this, whether it's Gizmodo or your stuff or Reddit. I guess I just find it interesting that people will. I think the most interesting part of this whole story are the people that think it's funny what he does, which is fine. Everyone has a sense of humor, but then say like, well, dude, just lighten up. It's just fun. And then get so bent when people hate it and criticize it. Like, be consistent. If you are going to tell people to tough up and not, get bent when they see this stuff, and then they do get bent, then don't get bent yourself. That part of it I don't understand. Maybe you can explain it to me.
I don't think I can explain it to you because I don't mind if people are offended by it. I'm not sure it's really worth the column that, this is some, I don't even know, how old is he? 25 or whatever. It's some Swedish kid having fun with YouTube. To me, but he is obviously the number one YouTuber, and he is newsworthy.
That's part of the story. You're like, if you're saying if Disney didn't drop him, it wouldn't be a story. The most popular guy on YouTube by subscribers, saying death to all Jews and the response that would inevitably get, that would definitely be a story.
Yeah.
And of course, the opinions that come out of that.
But it's nothing South Park hasn't been doing for 25 years now. Okay,
but see, I read that too. And that's different to me because when South Park does it, it's part of a larger joke. There's more there. And maybe I can't quantify it because I'm not an academic and studies comedy, but to me personally, when I see some comedians, when I see Louis C.K., riff on stuff like that, or I see South Park riff on stuff like that, it's a lot. It's more than just the shock value. It's part of a larger joke. It's all woven together. This was just like, hold up a sign. It was only the shock value. And to me, when it's only the shock value, that's just like hitting someone over the head with a club. It gets boring really fast. You know what it's like? I guess I'll tell you exactly what it's like. It's like when I was 12 and watching someone get hit in the nuts was hilarious. Fart jokes were funny until I was about 25. And then after that, like, dude, I don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't care about cross-dressing anymore as a joke when, it was funny when I was a kid. It was Monty Python. Don't give a shit anymore. At a certain point, if it's a one-trick pony, and I don't care. If it's part of a larger joke or ensemble, then, yeah, I can get into it. But this wasn't that.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now, of course, you know about Ben Fritz, one of the authors of this article, who had some controversial statements in his past on his own. Does that... of course, people are going to dig through that stuff and find that. So, when those tweets were found, I've been in contact with Jack Nikas of the Wall Street Journal, and he was answering some of my questions. I asked him, some questions outright. Like I asked him about when or if he tried to contact PewDiePie because he didn't make it clear. It was clear in the article, but PewDiePie had kind of argued against it, but he then later made it clear. But it was when Ben Fritz's tweets came out that the Wall Street Journal just went dead silent. Jack Nikas punted me over to PR, and PR isn't responding. So what do you think about the Wall Street Journal going after PewDiePie for these jokes when it looks like they're the writer of one of these articles? It's kind of similar stuff. Not the same, but, definitely off off-color jokes, I guess you could say?
I think three things. First, I think newspaper reporters don't talk. That newspaper reporters say no comment are kind of hypocrites. So I think you should always say something. And two, PR is never going to talk to you because it's not in their interests.
Right.
And three, reporters are the first people who should know if you tweet something out, it's there forever. But I will say this. I don't care, because if the story is good, then, and he can be, I mean, I don't know, but if he is an asshole, I don't care. I care that the story itself is sound. They tried to reach him. They quoted extensively from his side of the story. In fact, he has more response than Disney has. So if you're actually to count the words that he is defending himself with versus the words that Disney said, he has more of that space. And not that journalists count words. It's, whatever they feel they can do to be balanced. So, I wonder how old these guys are. You talk to them. I mean, the one thing I wonder about young reporters, getting on Twitter, making jokes, and then sometimes young reporters will tell me, like, Koretzky, you got to stick up your ass. Don't tell us we can't have a life. And I'm like, no, you can have a life, but if you're going to do this job, you also have a responsibility. If you don't like it, go do another job. Make more money doing something else, because God knows everything else will make you more money.
Yes, that's true. I know Jack Nikas is, I think he's younger than I am from his pictures. I don't know about Ben Fritz or the other guy.
How old are you, birthday boy?
44 now.
All right.
Oh, God. So old. All right, let's look at some of the comments on YouTube. They're saying it's not a sound story. The story is PewDiePie getting dropped by Disney, which doesn't happen without their initial hit.
Look, I don't. The only option is for the reporter to not do the story, to not call Disney. I can guarantee you that if they're spending millions of dollars, it's going to get back to them eventually. And if I'm the reporter and I see that and I want to do a story on that, I'm calling everybody I can to get their response to it. It is not my responsibility that I am the first person to tell someone. I am not doing it to tell them. I'm doing it to get a comment. If anybody believes that the guy with 53 million subscribers on YouTube, it would not get back to Disney, that the story only happened because of the Wall Street Journal, I don't think they have a very good idea how business works.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's look through some. Oh boy, they definitely have some comments here.
Hit me.
Ask him about the Wall Street Journal cutting his video out of context.
Now, so I haven't seen any of that, and if that happened, I saw something about screenshots, but then the video was taken down by the time I tried to look at it. Yes, if any of that happened, it's wrong, and I will tell you that where most journalism goes wrong is when it makes it to moving pictures.
Mm-hmm. One is saying they complained to Disney before they got PewDiePie's side.
Well, they tried to reach PewDiePie, and I don't know that the order of it matters. You get Disney, and I can guarantee you this. I mean, I don't know. It's not obvious from the story, but I have interviewed businesses before. Guarantee you the Wall Street Journal called and said, hey, we want to talk about this story. And I guarantee you this didn't happen. Great, let me get on the line right now. Let's have a conversation. You know damn well they said, we'll get back to you later today. And then they had a powwow, and then they told the Wall Street Journal exactly what they wanted to say. There was no, oops, we shouldn't have said that, because that's not how corporate America works. You thought that the PR people at the Wall Street Journal were stonewalling you? They're amateurs compared to big companies like Disney. Yes. They made a statement. They figured out exactly what they wanted to say. That's what they told the Wall Street Journal. So it wasn't like the Wall Street Journal sandbagged Disney.
Okay. It's not that people were offended. It's that the offended people tried to make it seem as if he was making serious political commentary.
But how? I read all that on Reddit too, and I always marvel at these kind of things, because I don't know what's in his head. I don't know what anyone else does either. So I don't care, because if what he did for shock value shocked people, they can read anything into that they want. I do know this. I went to the Daily Stormer, which is a white supremacist site, and I actually live not a couple of hours away from the headquarters for the Aryan Nation. So they loved it. So they have their own interpretation. So I guess what a lot of PewDiePie fans are saying is the white supremacists are wrong, the lefty liberals are wrong, we're right. But you know what? When you put something out there, whether it's art or humor or even journalism, and someone has an opinion on it, they take it a certain way, that defies critique. That's how they took it. You have to deal with that fact. You can be mad about it. You can say they didn't get it, but that's a legitimate response, just like your response might be legitimate. So I'm really kind of trying to figure my way around why people are mad at everyone else in the world taking it the wrong way.
Okay. Now, in a lot of the editorials, people are saying PewDiePie is, well, he's normalizing Nazism. He's been called a fascist and a bigot. And sometimes they will quote the Daily Stormer, who will say, "Oh, hey, yeah, PewDiePie is doing a Nazi salute or something," and so they use that as evidence of his horrible effects that he's having. Of course, that's not a valid logical argument that these awful people agree with him, so therefore he's awful. But that is used so much by these editorialists that it almost seems to me like, and I'm sure a lot of other people, it's almost a concerted effort, what they're calling, I don't know if it's quite this bad, but almost a concerted effort by these columnists to go after the new media, the new YouTube, which is, YouTube is taking over, and so these website people, these print people aren't liking it, so they're going after YouTube, and so now we're in this whole Wall Street Journal plus all these websites versus YouTuber war, I guess.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
What's wrong with everybody hashing out all these issues? I mean, these are opinion columnists, and there are opinions on both sides. As far as the Daily Stormer goes, I find it interesting that PewDiePie hasn't at least taken one shot at them ever that I could see, making fun of them. If he's gonna, I think he would have a lot more respect and it'd be a lot more bulletproof if he made fun of everybody. There are comedians. You mentioned South Park. South Park is a prime example because they've pissed off the left and the right. In fact, they've confused the left and right because they take shots at everybody. And when you take shots at everybody, you're sort of inoculated from these kind of claims. PewDiePie, I don't know how old it does look pretty young, but if he took shots at everybody, he might not be getting flack from anybody.
Yeah, that's true, but assuming he's a Nazi, my site partner Oscar.
Why is that such a stretch? Given that if you just watch a little bit of it, that really comes across. And if the argument is you have to watch more of it, my answer is no, I don't.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though, is that he makes videos for his audience of 54 million people who are very happy, and his audience has been growing ever since this whole thing, too. So he's not... My partner Oscar says when you're a comedian, you go to different clubs, you have a different audience. And you try out your jokes. You have different audiences. Some get it, some don't. PewDiePie has the same audience by and large. Other people can obviously view his videos. Anyone can view them. But he's performing for an audience who, probably 99.99% of them are on his side and appreciate, I guess, his humor. I'm not exactly one of them. But they're there for him. So
you're saying that basically, if you have a lot of fans you shouldn't be criticized by the other people?
Yes, that's exactly. No, of course not.
I don't understand. I mean, if he has 54 million fans and they like what he's doing, he'll keep doing it. I mean, one thing I don't support is censoring him. Like,
Right.
now YouTube's a private company. They want to get rid of him. I guess they can, but that's up to them. But I think he should have the right to say whatever the hell he wants to say. But I think you also have the right to get shit for it. So the defense that he has a lot of fans, so what? 54 million, that's a lot of people, but there are 7 billion on the planet. So
Yeah, but
as a majority, I guess it's okay. Anybody that has a problem with him can say they have a problem with him. That's an audience of one, and they have the right to do that.
Sure, I agree.
Frankly, if there are 54 million fans, then why are they even caring about this and getting all bent out of shape? Because you know what? This guy is not going to go broke.
Well, they obviously cost him money, though. I mean, and they're going after. People are
millions.
calling this guy that they like. They're calling him a bigot and a fascist and a Nazi.
Yeah, and and because he's doing things for shock value, he opens himself up to that criticism.
Sure.
And you know what? I could safely say. I mean, I haven't researched this as much as you have, but let's just see if you agree with me on this statement.
Okay.
If he makes not one more dollar for the rest of his life, he will already make more money than you or I will in our entire lives.
I disagree with that. I'm going to be rich one day, Koretzky. Okay, I agree.
Come back and you prove me wrong.
me and my reasonable journalism are going to make it rich.
As a journalist, I would be much more sensitive to his plight if the result of this would be maybe he couldn't eat. But to me, this I don't see a big victim here for PewDiePie. I don't think he's facing. He's got 54 million fans, and they still like what he's doing, and he's already playing this up. Then he can continue to do what he wants, and if Disney wants to pull out their money, they have the right to do that. And if people want to say he's a bigot and an asshole, you know what? When you do things for shock value, you open yourself up to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of these people calling them bigots and assholes are assholes themselves, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, if he's saying death, I haven't watched every video, so he says, the death to Jews thing, he makes some Nazi references because I understand that that's the way you get a rise out of people, right? Isn't that the argument that I was reading on Reddit, that this is just a ploy to get stick up the ass old farts like me to react, right? That's the argument?
Not really. I mean, the joke, and a lot of people are saying this in the column or in the comments too, is that the whole joke really was about getting people on Fiverr to do anything,
right,
to see if they would do anything.
I guess my question is this: how come there wasn't anything that said lynch the niggers, or why was it just, or you really wanted to piss off a lot of people in America, fuck Trump or kill Donald Trump or rape Trump's ass or rape Hillary or it could have been anything. But when I watched his videos, or I watched different parts of it, it does seem to focus just he goes back to the same well all too often. I think I would respect him more if he picked on a wider bunch of people. So it does open himself up to critique that he's trying to do the shock value as a one-trick pony. Why not pick on other people?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, his brand of comedy is certainly not to my taste.
Right. So, so when you're saying it's normalizing anti-Semitism, well, you know what? He's definitely not in the league of South Park yet.
Yeah. One person's saying, and what about do no harm for journalists?
Well, you're saying the journalists did harm by calling Disney and informing them?
Probably.
Okay, well,
by getting Disney to drop, in doing so, they dropped them, and obviously that, well,
I guess I look at it this way: if I call someone up, and I guess I gotta be honest, if I was doing this story and I called Disney, I would think they would already know. I'd be surprised if they didn't, because usually you have people monitor. There's something called clip services. They monitor. There are people that actually get paid just to watch media, and every time someone's mentioned, file a report. We used to do that when I worked at the Tribune Company. So if I called Disney, I would actually be shocked if they didn't already know about it. But if they didn't, I'm not making them do anything. I'm just telling them what's going on in the world. I'm not twisting their arm. Their decisions are their own, just like PewDiePie's decisions are their own. Journalism is not so powerful that it forces anybody to do anything. Disney huddled together and made a decision. If I was responsible for turning them on to something 12 hours before they would normally figure it out, I don't see the big difference.
Okay. Okay, for those of you in the comments, if you have anything else to say or any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, we will start wrapping things up.
Oh, by the way, I'm not trying, by the way, to convince anyone to change their minds. I am hoping that usually when people get very worked up on any side, usually there gets to be spun conspiracy theories.
Yes.
I just want to assure people that journalists are not organized enough to have conspiracies. They can barely meet deadlines. So I've yet to see anyone in journalism organize any conspiracy. I mean, obviously, individuals can try to do some shady stuff, but if you're talking about a whole company trying to do something, journalists are really good at leaking stuff, not only accepting leaks from other people, but leaking stuff out of their own company. So every time a newspaper lays someone off, the world knows about it before the layoffs actually happen, because journalists know how to leak stuff to other journalists. Are really good about that. So if anything really evil and conspiratorial was happening in any publication, trust me, other journalists would be talking about it.
Someone says it's not about being mainstream, it's about treating the audience like they're stupid.
Well, which audience? Because the Wall Street Journal's audience is not PewDiePie's audience, and each publication knows its particular audience. The Wall Street Journal article was written very Wall Street Journalish. It is very true that if you are into something and you read a mainstream article, it'll never be good enough because you are totally into it. I grew up playing ice hockey, and I would be interviewed sometimes because I actually moved to Florida. My dad started an ice hockey league because we moved from Vermont. We had an ice hockey league in Miami back in the late 70s. So the Miami Herald and all these newspapers came and interviewed me, a teenage hockey player. And I hated all the articles because they weren't detailed enough. They made, they would draw, because they were talking to a bunch of people that didn't know what the fuck ice hockey was.
Right.
So the Wall Street Journal article, for anyone that watches PewDiePie, is going to be so basic because you know everything. The people that are reading this, they know nothing. So whenever you read an article that is about something you do not know, just remember that there's someone who does know that shit who thinks you're an idiot and that article was too simple.
Okay. Do you see the games press ever getting better? We're still getting ridiculous hit pieces and people covering their friends without disclosing it.
You know what? I haven't surveyed the whole landscape, but I will say this. I am impressed that in 2 years there have been good stories, because I was worried in the beginning that it's such a young industry that it may not have anything good. I've said this before to somebody, but I consider games journalism to be where music journalism was in the 60s. And if you ever read early editions of Rolling Stone, it sucked. I mean, it was misspellings and it didn't even make any freaking sense. It was just terrible. But a decade later, it was doing great journalism. I mean, hell, 20 years later, they were hiring like liberal and conservative columnists. P.J. O'Rourke was a writer for Rolling Stone. They were doing all this great music journalism and then delving into politics. I would not be surprised if in 10 years that the games press is like Rolling Stone. There might be liberal and conservative columnists. There might be really in-depth, awesome games journalism all the time. And my only hope is that the Kunkel Awards, if it has any small part to play, it might just speed up that process by a couple of years.
Sure. I think, well, game journalism in particular has the problem of all the information is controlled by the companies. So it's very hard to get any information without going through PR. So that's obviously an issue that journalists have to. That's a whole nother thing that we could talk about.
That's the same thing that happened in music journalism. The music labels, they controlled all the access to the musicians. If you didn't write a good article, about an artist, you didn't get access to that artist. And the way around that was better journalism. Was basically a lot of magazines back in the 70s saying, "Fuck that! I'm not going to kiss ass just to get an interview." Because what do musicians say when you interview them anyway? Nothing.
Yeah.
They say like, "Man, my influences are like Springsteen and Bach, and I put music together in a way no one else ever has, dude." Like, it's all worthless anyway. So what good music journalists did was focus on the people listening to the music, focused on like other issues around the music. And I think gaming journalism has to go that way too. Right now, gaming journalists are all pissed because the industry controls the access. Well, the solution is to do more stories on the people that play the games, to do more some of the stories that won Kunkel Awards are really interesting. Talk to people that used to be developers. Talk to independent developers about when they were working for the big companies. And some of that is already happening. But the way around it isn't to like kiss ass and suck at that teat of the corporations. It's to go off and say, if you're not going to give me access, screw you. I'm going to still cover this stuff for my readers, for the people that play the games. It's for them. Same thing happens in sports journalism, right? The coaches talk to certain writers if they write too many negative stories. You know what they do? They talk to the players. They talk to anyone else to get the story, and they don't let those assholes win.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good point that I've made before. Gaming journals write for other game journals, not gamers. And that is true of a lot of game journalists.
That's true. I mean, sadly, that's true of a lot of journalists. They write for acknowledgement of their peers. I don't think that's just gaming journalism.
Yeah.
I think that changes as you get a little older and you realize that if you really want to impress people, impressing your readers is better than impressing your fellow journalists because there are more readers than there are journalists.
That's true. That's true. Okay, Koretzky, well, thank you for joining me. I think we'll wrap things up. Thank you for all your work with the Kunkel Awards again. As a winner of a Kunkel Award this year and a nominee last year, or a finalist, I should say, I had to say it was definitely an honor to win this year. I will have to say I tweeted this too. I thought it was a bit funny that the winner for the best news or excellence in news reporting was a guy writing for free on a free hosting website. But hopefully we'll see some better stuff next year, and I'm certainly going to try and up my game as well.
Well, if that's what happens, then it was all worth it.
Yes, good. All right, well, thank you again for joining me. Thank you, all you people, for joining us in this conversation. You can follow Koretzky on Twitter, although he doesn't tweet very much.
Nope, I don't care either.
Yeah, okay, he doesn't care, but it's at Koretzky, so you'll find some interesting swearing from time to time with Koretzky. It's always fun, always entertaining, always good to talk to you. Look forward to talking to you again, and take care. Bye, everyone. Now, let me make sure I know how to end the stream here before I cut anything off.
Before you have an embarrassing hot mic moment?
Yeah, I did that the other day, actually, where I hit the live on my OBS studio. There's a live streaming button, and then there's a recording button. I was recording a video, and I hit the other button, and so that screwed it up. So,
I don't want anyone hearing about our bribes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, all that money we're raking in. Okay, and stopping streaming now. Thanks everyone for joining us.